My name is Abby, and I am a television writer at mxdwn.
Hey,
And yeah, I'm here to interview Lenore Zann, who's having her book coming out. So,
yeah,
a Rogue's Tale, a memoir. So, how are you? I'm sure you're very excited to have your book
yeah,
coming out.
yeah. It's been a long time coming. I've been asked for years to write my story. Lots of friends along the way have said, Lenore, you got to write about your origin story because it's so interesting. But I just never had time because I was too busy living it, you
Yeah,
know?
sure.
And then I finally took the last 2 years, and I found that when I was on planes, going to different events, Comic Cons, and different jobs, that once I was on a plane, I actually got in the zone, and I could write on the plane.
Oh wow,
So yeah, it was pretty cool. And my one of my last trips, when I was finishing up writing it, was to Australia, where I came from, where I originated. And so that's a 16-hour trip from LA to Sydney, Australia. So I wrote 4 chapters on the way there, and then on the way back, I wrote another 4 chapters. So it was
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
As a writer, you probably know what it's
yeah,
like.
it's especially traveling on the go. I feel like that's definitely has a lot more inspiration, and you also
Yeah,
have like more free time.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you started your acting career when you were 19, correct?
Yeah.
Can you just
Well, actually, I was 16 when I started in
okay.
professional theater. And 17 when I got my equity card. I'd done 3 professional shows by then. So I was actually 17 when I started, but 19 when I landed my first starring role.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Can you describe how your life shifted from your regular life to pursuing your dream and living in Hollywood?
Yeah, well, I mean, I came from a small town. Originally I came from Sydney, Australia, but we moved to Canada when I was 8. And when I was 9, we moved to Nova Scotia. So it's a small town, Truro, and there's not much opportunity there for an actor, but I got cast to play Adelaide in Guys and Dolls, the musical Guys and Dolls, when I was 15, for my high school musical. And once I got on stage, I just loved it. I felt like this is where I belong. So then I auditioned for Neptune Theatre, which is the professional theater company in Halifax, and I got in and I did small roles to begin with. Then I went to university, studied drama and political science for a couple of years. But each summer I would do another show, a professional show. And then at the age of 19, I was discovered at the Charlottetown Festival and chosen to play Marilyn Monroe, who's an icon, a goddess. And I played the lead in this rock musical, a rock opera called Hey Marilyn. And when I played that role, suddenly the newspapers were saying a star is born and things like this, just overnight. It was like a fairy tale story. And so I started getting offers for movies and television. And so I started being flown to, different spots in America, across Canada, over to Australia, Europe. And bit by bit by bit, I started booking all the time. And at 20 was when I went to Los Angeles for the very first time. And I talk about this in the book, how the first person to bring me to LA was actually a female impersonator named Craig Russell, who had become a friend of mine and invited me to come stay with him at his little house in Hollywood. And so my first introduction to Hollywood was really the gay underbelly of the city. And Craig took me to all the nightclubs where he was performing. And that was my first introduction to Hollywood. And then I came back several years later to stay and perform and do different television shows and movies. And also by then I got into animation and was doing voiceovers as well. So that's how it happened.
That sounds so exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it was, especially at that age. I was so young and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here in
yeah.
Hollywood. I learned how to rollerblade and all
Oh,
these things. Bought
yeah,
my first pair of roller skates. It was an exciting time.
yeah. It definitely feels like the world is your oyster when you're that
Yes,
young.
when things are good, they're very, very good. But
Mm,
sometimes, there are ups and downs in this business, and there are times when it's dry and you're not getting anything. It has its peaks and it has its valleys. You
yeah.
just have to learn to, it's like a roller coaster. You have to learn how to hang on.
Oh, for sure. What was it like creating the personality of Marilyn Monroe in the rock musical?
Well, as an actor, I really love doing my homework and learning about a character. So I did a lot of research. I read every book I could find about her. I didn't really want to watch her movies too much because I didn't want to do an impersonation. I wanted to really express her essence of who she really was. And so I studied all that about her. And then, but I listened to her singing, and I was a singer myself. That's how I got to be playing in a rock opera. And so by the time I got to put her together on stage and perform her, I was able to imitate her voice. Um, and some of her mannerisms that I'd seen in like footage of when people were talking to her and interviewing her. But I didn't want to do an impression, and I just wanted to really do her, her deep, deep essence. So once I put the wig on and the makeup and the sequin gowns and stuff, I came out of my dressing room and I was Marilyn. And I played her in such a way that when she was in front of the camera or in front of a male that she wanted to impress, she became this Marilyn Monroe that we all know and love from the films. But when she's not on stage or with a man, she has a more straightforward presence and voice that's not as put on. Because I wanted to show that Marilyn also became Marilyn when she wanted to perform or when she wanted to impress a man, and that she then dropped it when she was just by herself. And that was a lot of fun to play. So
Um,
I got to play both sides of her personality and who she really was
mm,
behind the facade.
oh, that's amazing. Have you always admired Marilyn Monroe?
No, I didn't know who she was when I first started. I mean, I'd heard of her,
Mm,
but um she wasn't even as big and popular in like 1980 as she is now. Her popularity and her fame has grown. Um so uh No, I mean, I wasn't like a Marilyn Monroe fan or anything like that. It was a role that I was cast in. And then I did my homework to learn who that person was. And then I did my best to portray her. Since then, I've become a fan. Since then, I've become very close to Marilyn and very almost protective of her. I really felt that she was a smart woman who got stuck in her own persona. And when she wanted to get out of it and play other roles, it was really hard because people just wanted to see her as this dumb blonde. And she was a lot more than that. She was a really smart woman.
yeah, I definitely agree.
Thank you.
Um, how was your experience writing your memoir, A Rose Tale? a memoir? Were there certain memories that you had in mind that you knew you wanted to include, or was it more spontaneous?
It was pretty spontaneous to beginning. To be real, I got started right at the beginning of my life. Just the memories that I could remember from when I was really, really young, and the early years in Australia. Um, I started there, and then I moved on, and I just went through my life, and I just wrote. I went at one point after I started making a list of memories that were very, very potent that I thought were things I should include. Because when you're writing a memoir or an autobiography, it's hard because, you can't put in every single thing that you've ever done, or, you can't put in every single memory. You got to figure out, well, which ones are more potent, which ones are going to be more interesting, intriguing for an audience. And uh, yeah, and so I kind of wrote spontaneously. Um, and I went back when I went to Australia for that time when it was towards the end of the writing of the book. When I was in Australia, I went back to those early years, and I added and subtracted some of it because when I came back to Australia, of course, I had many more memories come. And so I wanted to make it as real and authentic as possible. So I added in stuff about the smells and sights and the emotions that I had in Australia, and especially when I was a kid. It all came back to me. So that was really interesting. I did the same thing with Marilyn Monroe, actually, when I wrote my first play when actually, when I quit drinking 28 years ago. And one of the first things I felt like doing was writing. And I decided to write a one-woman show on the life of Marilyn Monroe, but now looking at her life from when she's an older woman, looking back when she was 36, looking back at her life because I got sober at 36. I got sober at 36 when Marilyn Monroe actually died of a overdose of alcohol and drugs at the same age, at the age of 36. So it was pretty poignant to me to write about a subject that I knew very well because I'd done all the research and I really had a feeling for Marilyn. And so when I wrote my play, um, I wrote about her LA years when I was here not when I was in LA. I was living by the beach in Santa Monica, and that was where she lived at the end of her life too. She had a house in Santa Monica. So I wrote her LA years there. And then I went to New York and I wrote her New York years there because again I wanted to pick up on sights and smells and what New York made me feel and I imagined it would have made her feel as well. And so in that sense I like to write from the place that I'm at. Um, and utilize that the sensories, all the senses. And yeah, and I found that that worked really well. So I did the same thing with my book.
Awesome. I actually had a chance to read it because the Amazon had provided a sample. So
Great, great.
yeah, and also thank you so much for adding that spark to Marilyn Monroe and even that play you were doing. It sounds like they share a lot of you guys share a lot of similarities. And
Yeah,
also
we do too. Yeah.
this also leads to my next questions. What similarities do you find in Rogue in the X-Men series, animated series, and how has she shaped you into the person you are now?
Thank you for that question. Rogue and I like to say playing Rogue is like putting on a pair of really comfortable, well-worn gloves.
Oh,
I just slide her on, and there she is. My daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. Um, she comes naturally to me. I have a lot of similar qualities. We both really want to fight for social justice, for equality and fairness to all. We don't like bullies. And we will stand up for somebody else who might be being picked on by somebody bigger and stronger than them. And of course, Rogue is the strongest woman in the universe. So you don't want to mess with her. You don't want to upset her. Um, and in my earlier years, I did have a temper. I had a temper, but it's softened with time. And I've realized that having it tempered doesn't do you any good, and it's just a waste of energy, really. So I tend to be more meditative now. I meditate, and I make sure that I think through things before I say something. Rogue is a lot more spontaneous, and that's how I was most of my life as a young person. But yeah, we have a lot in common in those ways. We really we will fight for the underdog and try to make things right. And I love that about Rogue. And it just comes naturally to me. So what came first, the chicken or the egg?
yeah. Um, I definitely, when I was doing research, I did the research on your life first, and then I watched the X-Men series. Um, and I definitely saw a lot of similarities between the two of you. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you
And that's why
hoping?
I called the book A Rogue's Tale.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a bit of a rogue, and I come from Australia, which is a country of rogues.
Yeah.
And I talk about it in the book how discovering that I came from from a background where of convicts that were brought to Australia involuntarily. I found out I had a couple of highway robbers on both sides of the family. I was like, wow, these are my ancestors. Who knew? I did my
Yeah.
research there too when ancestry became a thing and when you could actually do DNA tests and look into your heritage. That was a fascinating dive. I really enjoyed it. So I also used some of that in the book too to talk about my origin story. Where did I come from? Who
Oh,
am I? Why am I the way I am? Adventurous, ready to jump on a plane or a boat or whatever and go for an adventure.
that's awesome. Well, and adding on to that, what are you hoping fans get from your memoir?
Um, from the book,
Yes.
eh, well, I think a lot of fans are interested in all of us who play the roles and in the X-Men. And so I figured that fans would be really interested and intrigued by my backstory, my origin story. So I wrote it as a love story really for them, for fans of our show, but also for women who are trying to find themselves, um, women who have been abused in any way in a relationship or sexually assaulted. I talk about that in the book as well because I too have had those terrible experiences. Um, and for young people who are just trying to find themselves and figure out who am I anyway and why am I here and what's my purpose? And sometimes I think people, especially in your 20s, can get, well, actually, teenagers too, can get kind of lost and start to feel that they're not important and that they've got nothing to offer the world. And my advice and my point with the book is yes, you are needed. You are a special, unique human being with a lot to offer the world. And we all have our own superpowers. We just have to dig down deep and find out what are our superpowers, what makes us unique and special. Because everybody has one or two or three. And so don't give up. Keep the faith, keep the hope alive, and just keep going because you never know what's around the corner.
That's awesome. And I think the book will connect with that,
Thank you.
of course. At what point in your career did you explore different options and want to become a politician?
Well, just a sec. I'm just going to grab some water here.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, well, it's interesting because when I was younger, in my 20s, I befriended a woman, female politician, who was the first female leader of any political party in Canada. Her name was Alexa McDonough from Nova Scotia. And she used to come, she loved the theater, and she used to come to the theater at Neptune Theater when I was performing. So I came back to Neptune Theater in my 20s and played leading roles. So I started off there when I was 16, getting paid $75 a week, but playing small roles. But that's what got me my actor's equity card, my professional card. But I came back in my 20s after I'd already played Marilyn and was a name in the entertainment world. I came back and Alexa used to come and see the plays, and she was friends with the artistic director, whose name was John Neville, who was a British actor and director. Um, and so he introduced us after one opening night, and we hit it off like gangbusters. And she was the leader of what is known as the New Democratic Party here in Canada, um, or NDP, as they call them. And that party is a lot standing up for social justice. And I naturally was drawn to that. And she would take me around and she invited me to come to watch her in the House, in the legislature in Halifax when I think it was 22 or 24, something like that, in my early 20s. And she brought me on International Women's Day and offered for me to job shadow her just so I could see what it's like to be a politician, a female politician. And at that time, she was the only woman in the House of Legislature, the Legislative Assembly, as we call it here. And there were 53 members, and she was the only woman. And she was the only NDP member in the House as well. So there were two other parties, the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. And she was the only NDP and the only woman. And on International Women's Day, she was rising in her seat to do speech after speech about how much women needed to even have their lives improved even more, and how important it was to raise people up out of poverty and to deal with gendered violence, violence against women. I was amazed by her. But the men that were in the house, like the other 52 members, were not even listening to her. They were throwing paper airplanes at each other and laughing and talking and just ignoring her. And I thought, how disrespectful on any level, on any day, but especially on International Women's Day. It just hit me like a ton of bricks how women really are still struggling to be heard. And after that, Alexa took me by taxi to another event that she had to give a speech at a university, um, where a lot of young women go to this particular university. And she said, Lenore, and she was crying. She had tears in the back of the taxi when we went over there. She said, I'm supposed to talk about how far women have come, but you saw what just happened. This is my life. And but yet she proceeded to give an incredible speech and had everybody jumping and standing to their feet at the end. And it was interesting because as Marilyn, when I had come out on stage opening night after my performance, people jumped to their feet. I had a standing ovation in like this 1,000 seat, 2,000 seat theater. I can't remember exactly. It was huge. And I thought, wow, it's kind of like the theater in a way, but you're talking about all these issues that matter to you as an individual, not having to recite lines that are given to you by someone else. And so she said, I think you should think about going into politics. And I said, well, I don't think I should go yet because I don't think people would take me seriously. I felt like Marilyn Monroe. People, you know, oftentimes I was being cast as femme fatales and so the sex symbol. Um, but I felt like they wouldn't take me too seriously. Kind of like Marilyn. I said, I'll have to, be older and have more experience at life, and more able to deal with the punches, the punches that come along with it seems like to be a politician. And I said, but when I'm feeling like I'm ready to tackle it, I'll let you know. And she said, good, because we need you. We need someone like you in office. Um, you're the real deal. So when years later, I was then 49, when I was asked to run for politics in my hometown of Truro and run for the NDP, for a provincial or state election, I called Alexa. I said, Alexa, they're asking me if I would like to run in to represent my home. By that time, she was in federal politics. She was in Ottawa representing Nova Scotia as the leader of the NDP in Ottawa. And that this was a provincial election that was coming up. And she said, yes, go for it. She said, I'm now a grandmother and I'm ready to leave politics. I've been in politics 24 years and I'm ready to leave and just go and be with my family and, enjoy the grandkids and enjoy retirement. But yes, it's your time. Go for it. And I won. I won that first election and then I won two more elections after that. So, and then I ran federally for the Liberal Party, which is more the party that's in the middle. They're more like the Democratic Party. The New Democrats are more like the Bernie Sanders Party, the Social Democratic Party. But I found that Prime Minister Trudeau, the younger, was so progressive, fighting for against climate change, fighting for all green energy, fighting against violence against women, fighting for mental health, fighting for social justice, all the things I believed in. And he asked me to run federally for his party and for him, and I agreed. So altogether, I did 12 years in politics, 10 years as an MLA member of the Legislative Assembly of Nova Scotia and for the NDP, and then 2 years as the federal member for Cumberland Colchester is the name of the riding that Truro sits in. And I was a member of parliament for that. And so that's 4 terms I did, and it was all very exciting and some very dark moments as well, but very fulfilling.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, if you're comfortable, can you share your thoughts on the politics going on in the US right now?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, life and politics are like a pendulum. They swing back and forth. Oftentimes, when you get a lot of progress, there's a big pushback as well. And suddenly sometimes that lever on the clock is pushed back in the opposite direction by people who just don't want to change. They want to stick to the same old. And I feel that's what's happening here. Um, America was very, very progressive for a number of years, And now the right wing has pushed its way back into society, and a lot of people are voicing, you know, bigotry and racism and misogyny and uh, and anti-LGBTQ because they don't understand it. They don't want to understand it. And they feel that things have gone too far and too progressive, and they want things to be the same way they were when they grew up. Well, progress is progress. Things change, and people become more intelligent about issues that used to baffle them. And so we need to keep moving forward. We need to keep growing and appreciating, as the X-Men would say, appreciating someone for being different and figuring that it's okay to be different. That's what makes the world such an interesting place. If every single person was a cookie cutter variation of the same thing, how boring the world would be. So it's my hope that eventually the pendulum will swing again and come back, and we can make more forward movement, um, because it's pretty scary to see what's going on right now. And it seems like there are people who feel emboldened to be able to speak in ways that are violent and detrimental to other people's well-being and other people's mental health, but they just need to spout out their anger and hatred, and that's really sad to see. So I
Yeah.
really hope that there is a shift again in 4 years, and that there will be elections that people can vote in and can choose the way that the country's going to go, and hopefully it will be in a different direction.
Yeah. What advice would Rogue give US citizens who may be weary of what's happening right now?
Rogue would say, keep the faith, sugar. Keep the faith. Keep that little light that's burning inside of you. Keep that flare going. Don't let it die out and don't give up. That's what she would say, and that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Don't give up. Don't give up hope. Just keep trudging forward, and hopefully more will be revealed and people will see that they need to come back to being kind and humane and compassionate and caring of others, not just about me, 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 me. What about me? What's good for me? It's what's good for all of us. That's what we should be thinking about. And that is the way forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Um, what can you describe how the X-Men sequel series came to fruition? And at what point were some of the original voice actors brought back into the fold?
Well, it's interesting because we did not know how popular the show had been until just recently when we began being invited to Comic Cons. And we started being invited to Comic Cons because it was 25 years since X-Men had aired on television. And so our first few cons that we went to, we were astounded at the reaction of people, of the fans. And by the time we went to Los Angeles Comic Con in 2019, there were like 100,000 people there, and they were screaming and yelling and excited and happy to see us when we came up on stage to do a panel. And Chris Potter, the original Gambit, and we were waiting in the wings to come on, and we looked at each other and we're like, is that for us? we were like, this sounds like they're for us. And then we were called out on stage. Our names were called. We went out on stage, and everybody was just jumping to their feet again and applauding us. And oh my gosh, it was overwhelming. And we thought, wow, we've really had an impact on people. We didn't know. And then as the fans started coming up and talking to us at our booth, they kept telling us how we made their childhood and how some people had been bullied or some people were in abusive parental relationships and how they felt different one way or another, and that the X-Men was their salvation, their safe place where they would rush home from school or they would get up on a Saturday morning just to watch our show. And they said, yeah, you made me feel like it's okay to be different. And I thought, that is so cool. I'm so glad we were able to do that. Um, and so at one point after that, during the pandemic, the Disney acquired the rights to X-Men and to Marvel. And apparently they did a poll online asking people if you could bring back any show from the 90s, any animated series from the 90s, which one would it be? And overwhelmingly people said X-Men. And so I like to tell the fans that really it's because of you that we're back. You made it clear to Disney and Marvel that you wanted to see more X-Men. And so at one of these Comic Cons, um, the X-Men actors and the two writers, Eric and Julia Lewald and Larry Houston, our original director, we all got together. We met for the first time because the actors had been doing the show originally in Toronto and they were all in LA and we never met them. So we got to meet for the first time and we got along like a house on fire. And so we went out for dinner at the end of the Comic Con and we said, wouldn't it be nice if somebody was to buy the rights to the X-Men and reboot the show and bring us all back again. And we're like, yeah, that would be awesome. Let's do a toast to that and put that out into the universe. That's what we want. We want to manifest this. And so we did a toast, we put it out to the universe, and then two years later, um, we got a call from Disney, from a casting woman asking us to lay down some tracks of an audition. And when we got the sides or the script, we all got to see, oh, this is X-Men. They're not just saying what it is, but these are our characters we already portrayed. So we just laid them down, and nowadays I was able to do it on my phone and send it as an MP3, recorded it on the phone, send it as an MP3 email. And I thought, well, I'll either get it or I won't, just like the first time. And then about a month later, they contacted me and said they wanted to meet me on Zoom, the producers in LA. So I was in Nova Scotia still. So I did a Zoom meeting with them and they said, oh my God, Lenore, we love your voice. We love, we're such huge fans. Would you please come back and reprise the role of Rogue for a new generation of fans? And I said, well, you had me at hello, sugar. So next thing you know, it only took like a couple of months. And then I was in the studio recording on my birthday, actually, November 22nd of 2021. And and away we go. And now, I mean, the show has become such a huge hit again. 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 99% approval rating on IMDb. Um, and fans just couldn't get enough. And now they're anxiously waiting for season two to drop, which will take about a year. I've already recorded most of my lines, and now they have to animate it, and that's what takes the time. So I believe the fans are going to love it. I loved it. I really enjoyed doing all of the scenes in season two. And so I think you're going to be in for a treat, but you got to have some patience because it'll be about a year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you so much for answering that. That was awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And also happy belated birthday. Um, yeah.
You. Thanks, sugar.
Oh, thank you.
I had it in Los Angeles here, with 22 friends, and it was really just a lovely, delightful. a lot of these friends are newer friends who I've met through my work this past year, a lot of the X-Men family. And it was just really nice to celebrate, our successful year and use my birthday as an excuse for us to celebrate. Lots of fun.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's also symbolic too, since it's the tw 22 people and then you were born on the
Yes.
22nd. So that's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
how will Rogue be different in season two, given what she's experienced?
Well, Rogue, she's not much different, but she's still on a mission to get justice for Remy.
Yes.
And so she's on what you would call the hero's journey. She's on the hero's path, where she would put aside her own safety for the love of someone else and in someone else's memory. And she will stop at nothing until she gets what she wants, which is justice. So, I think the fans are in for a wild ride again. And I mean, I think that Remy or Gambit is her soulmate and always has been, but she just couldn't let her guard down to embrace him fully because she's afraid that if she does, she'll kill him by her touch. And that is a very lonely path to travel for Rogue. The fact that she sees people holding hands, kissing, having babies, and she can't do any of that because of her superpowers. So, yeah, so Rogue is a sort of a loner in that sense, and she will continue to be on this path. And I think the fans are going to be enticed by the journey she goes on.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. Um,
Yeah.
can you share any news on the progress of season two?
No, just that we've recorded most of the lines.
Okay.
Uh, Most of us have done our lines in it, and now they have to animate it.
Yeah.
That's about all I know, really.
Um, and
Yeah.
last question before
Yes.
we wrap up. Do you have any advice for aspiring voice actors getting their feet wet in the industry?
Yes. First of all, become an actor. Get as much experience acting in stage, on television or film as possible. Uh, just throw yourself into it. Do auditions. See what things stick and get as much experience performing and playing roles, different types of roles, as possible. Also, something that's very handy is read out loud to yourself or someone else. Um, if you're reading a book, practice reading out loud, practice getting your tongue around the words so that you're not stumbling over words, so that you can read pretty clearly and succinctly on the fly. That will hold you in good stead as well. And take a voice class, take a class designed to train actors to be voice actors as well. It won't hurt you at all. And the classes that I liked to take in the end were classes where they would help you put together a reel, a sizzle reel, an acting demo, voice demo, because you're going to need that to be able to shop it around to agents and casting directors. So that you can show a variety of different voices that you can do and different characters you can play, maybe some different accents, those kinds of things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and being here. Um,
It's a pleasure, Abby.
thank you.
Real
And
pleasure.
I really hope your book is really successful, and I know it's going to be. And
Thank
yeah, I can't wait to read it.
thank you. Yeah, and people can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon and also Indigo, indigo.ca. and you can download the ebook immediately without having to wait for the paperback copy. So yeah, you can either pre-order the paperback copy or you can just download the e-copy. And I hope y'all enjoy my tale.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lenore.
Yeah.
I hope
Nice
you
to
have a
talk
great.
with
Yeah, you too. It was nice talking with you.
you. Yeah. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have a great day.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go and see Gladiator 2 for the second time.
Oh wow.
Take my nephew, who his favorite show, his favorite movie when he was a kid was Gladiator. He used to watch it all the time. And so I'm going to, he's now 24 years old and a professional musician. And I'm going to get together with him and take him to see Gladiator 2. So that'll
That's
be fun.
awesome. You have a great time doing that.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Abby. Sugar.
Bye, Lenore.
I love